name is Kiersten McCartney. I'm a physical therapist and I'm a current PhD student at the University of Delaware. It was a little bit of a winding road. So, growing up, my best friend's dad had a spinal cord injury when we were really young. So, I grew up with someone in my life who had a disability and used assistive devices. As a kid, to me, never seemed limited. But it really wasn't until after I graduated undergrad, I was working in Chicago at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab as a clinical exercise physiologist. My job was really to work with people with physical disabilities who, had been discharged from PT, but they still had things they wanted to work on. And so I was in the adaptive sport fitness centers, a lot of group fitness classes, as well as one-on-one training. In that time, I also started working about 20% for a researcher, Dr. Mira Rafferty. That to me was the point where I was like, oh, I love the clinic, but I really like this research. And in talking to her and just obviously being exposed to a lot of physical therapists and occupational therapists, I was like, I think this is a field I want to go into. And so with those experiences, I decided to pursue the dual degree program at the University of Delaware. I started in June of 2018 and finished my Doctor of Physical Therapy degree in December of 2020, and then started my PhD with Darcy Reisman right after that. Most of my work within Darcy's lab is really looking at precise exercise prescription to improve walking capacity outcomes for people with chronic stroke. So I've been exposed to clinical trial work. There's been 2 clinical trials that I've been able to be a part of and kind of build my own project from the clinical trial database that we had. And obviously coming in as an exercise physiologist, I was really intrigued by the training parameters and a lot of push right now of high intensity training works, but really wanting to dive more into that of how can we make that more precise so these beneficial outcomes that we see for some individuals who do this training can actually be applied to people with chronic stroke. And then I've really been fortunate during my time in my PhD. Darcy has really supported me as I've pursued kind of my own line of work in adaptive sport. So I've been a member of the adaptive sport special interest group for about 5 years now and just met some great people. And one thing led to another. And so I've been able to do some research looking at on-field performance metrics in amputee soccer. It's actually allowed me to travel the world, and I'm excited to continue kind of that line of work as well as I move into the next phase of my career. I'm at a program where there's a lot of people on faculty who've been supported by the foundation. My old boss, Miriam, has also been supported by the foundation in the past. And so I kind of had exposure to understanding what they're doing. But then as I moved into my PhD, obviously part of the training is understanding applying for different aspects to get different funding. Receiving the funding, I think before you even receive it, having to go through the process of putting together an application that's similar to a grant makes you really think about like, what am I interested in? What is my question and how am I going to answer it? And so I think those are really important skills, obviously, as a researcher to have. But then after receiving the money, I think in one way, as a student, you're new to this, but it's like people believe that the work that I'm doing is important to the field of physical therapy. And sometimes that affirmation can be helpful in moving you forward. But then it's allowed me to do the work. And I think it's really setting the stage for me to have the funding to do some of this research that I'm interested in. And then obviously it's feels like a positive feedback loop where you kind of can do the work, you can understand the science, you get more excited about it, you have more questions, and then, it kind of feeds itself. And so I think the foundation has just been really integral in just helping me build that foundation as a scientist to ask these interesting questions and then move forward into the next part of my career. So in the short term, I'm going to be pursuing a postdoc fellowship. So I'm excited about that. I've heard great things about postdoc. You don't necessarily have a degree that you're kind of seeking, but you don't yet have to be in charge of the whole lab. And so I'm excited to really gain more skills. Long-term career, I really want to improve the engagement and the opportunities for people with physical disabilities to engage in exercise, fitness, and sport. Like there's a lot of different ways that we go about that, but I'd really like to be able to track people longitudinally so we can understand how when people engage in this consistent exercise, whether it's in a community or it's at their home, it's through sport, how does that actually impact their health long term? Do we see less readmissions to hospitals? Do we see a higher quality of life? I think the days when you run the stats and see the results are some of the most rewarding days because that's the science. For the aim 1 of my dissertation, I still remember the day I kind of had to do this secondary analysis and I found this result and I basically ran down the hall to find my advisor and be like, oh my gosh, this is the idea. This is what we found. So I think that's something I would point to. And then in the line of work with adaptive sports and amputee football that I've been doing, I was standing on a field in Colombia with women from across the world who are coming together to play amputee football at the first World Cup. And I was able to look at on-field performance metrics. And part of the goal of this work is to potentially have amputee soccer recognized as either a Paralympic sport or by FIFA. And to me, it was I didn't realize the power that this data could have when I was going into it. But then talking to individuals who are trying to pursue that and like, we could really use this was like, oh my gosh. I think my exposure to research and really clinical research when I was at Shirley Ryan was really important in setting me on this path because I realized that the questions I was having in the clinic with, I'm seeing this person and I'm seeing this and what does that mean and how can I explore that? Research gave me that avenue to do that. But I also saw what the life of a like clinical rehab researcher was like. And it's very different from the life of a clinician and both are valuable paths and we need both of them. If someone's really thinking about pursuing the PhD and becoming a rehab researcher, I would say the number one thing is that your mentor really matters. And the purpose of a PhD is to become a good scientist who can ask quality questions and know how to ask them and know how to analyze data. And so it may not be that your mentor is studying the exact thing you want to study, but if they're going to teach you those skills and you're going to learn that, then that is going to send you on a path to go ask whatever questions it is that you want to ask. And I think it's something that you want to go in with eyes wide open. And so talk to individuals who are clinical researchers, talk to people who are research physical therapists who work for clinical researchers. Why did they not choose to get a PhD? Why did the other side choose to get a PhD? You're going to get great answers from kind of both of those avenues to understand where your skill set really fits better and maybe how you want your day to day to look. I think what's really great about the physical therapy profession is, and healthcare really at large, is people want to help other people improve their lives. There's endless amounts of evidence right now about how exercise is beneficial, right? And we know that, but we know that 80% of our population isn't necessarily exercising to the levels that we know are beneficial for physical health and mental health. And I think PTs really have this opportunity to be a person who can positively affect someone's life that goes beyond the clinic, right? And so we can help them understand if we make these types of behavioral changes, or if we can help you move past a pain that maybe you're in, but you can go back to doing the things that you love, or maybe you haven't been able to do things you love for a long time. But if we don't have evidence to back that up, then it's like growing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks. And so I think it's important that we're asking questions that will help improve the lives of our patients, which again I think is the goal that we all share. But it's building the science. And so in 5 years and 10 years, the work I'm telling you that's most beneficial to improve walking in people with stroke should probably not be the same thing I'm telling you today because we've just built on the science to get there. If we don't do research, then everybody's going to do their own thing. And then we end up with these outcomes that are extremely variable because everybody is just kind of doing what they want and not following this guidance of what we know is best to improve outcomes for the most amount of people.